Hello, everyone. What a pleasure to be again with you today for a webinar from EIPM. I'm Hervé Legendre. I'm the Director of Research for EIPM and one of the professors at EIPM. Very glad to be with you today for a webinar on 5 scenarios on the future of a procurement organization. I think the topic is, quite raising a lot of attention and interest. We've got some record level of attendees from all over the world. Got people from Asia, Australia, South America, North America. So really, a pleasure to have such an audience to distill a little bit some of the recent reflection on the impact of a number of evolution on the procurement function. Agenda for today will be for me to introduce you a framework that can help us to understand how the world is evolving around us. And then I'll be going through the 5 scenarios. I'll be coming back on them. I'm not going to say too much about them right now. And then we'll be closing by, talking about how do you blend, how do you, get the most of the right combination of these scenario. Important point for me is really to, share with you what's my view about procurement, what are the key assumptions behind this presentation. I think procurement is the function that's really at the interface between a company, the external environment. And our role is not just about price, cost, or compliance, sustainability, but it's really about all performance dimension of the company. Through what we mobilize in terms of external capabilities, suppliers, we have an impact on every performance dimension of the company. And why, we should be worth top level management attention, because we play a fundamental role, in the strategic adaptation of a company to its environment. So these are the key assumptions behind the whole presentation that I'm sharing with you today. And I think that's important for you to have that in mind in order to understand where I'm coming from. So let's look at the world today. We live in a fairly complex and dynamic economic and social environment. And I wanted to describe that with these, 4 dimensions. So what are the characteristics of this economic system? Well, on one hand, it's increasingly complex. We're facing an increasing diversity in terms of services and products that we need to purchase, that we need to secure for the organization. And we've got increasing interdependencies in very often long supply chain, but also dependencies with complementary product and services that come along with the one we source. And finally, we've got some evolving product architecture, especially through the introduction of cloud technologies, digitalization, when everything gets interconnected, where we've got more and more platforms. So that creates further complexity and often more choices, but also some dilemmas in terms of, what we should buy from whom. On the other side, another characteristic of the economic system that we have today is, the level of uncertainty that we are facing. Part of it, is due to all the geopolitical, regulatory, but also more classic one in terms of regulatory shifts. So all these shifts, demand shift, climate impact, all of these are creating fundamental uncertainties that impact decision-making process we have in the organization. Now, we've looked at, the characteristics of the economic systems, but we also have system dynamics, so changes. And on the very external world, we see a number of transition. We've got energy transition with the rise of the use of electricity for a number of economic activities. We've got a major issue, and we had webinars on the topic before, on the accessibility of resource. So we see sectors that are moving towards circular transition. And of course, we're going through digital transition, through which, everything that we buy ends up being interconnected. Supply chain are interconnected, but products and services are increasingly interconnected. And that's another transition we have. And we also have some geographic transition. Can be strategies of regionalization of your sourcing activities, or for some countries, we see a very strong push for localizing a lot of new technologies, a lot of activities within certain countries. And all these transitions are creating fantastic opportunities for procurement to shine and to contribute to a very fundamental impact, not just on the company, but also the evolution of some of the sectors that we source from. And on the other side, more internally, well, we're moving into an AI-enabled type of work. And artificial intelligence is sitting on top of a whole set of digital tools, and it's all together that, they're creating this impact that helps to, on one hand, automate some of the activities where we replace some of the human tasks by digital solutions or AI tools, but also augment, so collaboration between human and algorithm in order to take better decision, more informed decision, access better perspective in terms of information. Also, I think that's one important aspect. It's also about anticipation. By being able to manage a big flux of information, these tools help us to sometimes, predict what might be going wrong into our complete supply chain, or where we could see, some quick opportunities to step up performance, for instance. And part of the challenge with all this AI-enabled work and, harnessing the power of this technology is really to be able to supervise, the quality of these tools. So we have this economic system that's driven by complexity, uncertainty, transition from complete sector perspective and AI enabling work. So I think this, QTI framework is really for me a way of saying, hey, this is why we're very important from in procurement for the companies and for the evolution of economic activities. Being at the interface, we need to manage all these 4 dimensions in order to deliver better value for corporation, but also having broader economic, social, and economic impact as a whole. Okay. In this world, it's not just about finding suppliers. It's really procurement needs to act as an orchestrator, orchestrating supply chains, and also acting as an entrepreneur. Just to illustrate, what I mean by acting as an orchestrator, for instance, we see a lot of volatility in terms of the price of some raw materials, and sometimes we might not be in direct contact with the raw materials producer. But sometimes we need to be able not just to manage the direct provider of some equipment, but also to understand what's happening deeper within the value chain, and sometimes encourage a first-tier supplier to introduce some new raw materials or explore new raw materials, present to them some new suppliers of raw materials in order to evolve the broader supply chain. So that's very much in that sense that I'm talking of an orchestrator role, by being aware of not just what's happening in the direct market, but on a much broader base. We're able to orchestrate transformation, but also we're able to bring additional value to the company. And we need to act as entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs in the sense that, because we are on this interface between the inside and the outside of the company, we are in a unique position to see some of the evolution that are coming up from the market. And instead of waiting for someone to ask us to, hey, you should be looking into this option, well, we need to take an active role in proposing some, new practices, new ways of handling certain categories or working cross categories or handling the best from the market. So we need to anticipate, we need to push for innovation, we need to push these ideas to decision makers and not just wait project by project to be asked to source something for the immediate future. This is something we do sometimes as part of our strategies, but we can push further and get a more entrepreneurial or maybe extrapreneurial attitude for procurement. So orchestrators, we align capabilities, opportunities, and risk in order to build a cohesive value system. We understand the full value chain. We're able to, see all the dependencies and relationship, and we're able to push for the right combination of external capabilities and external suppliers to deliver the value expected. And as entrepreneur, we push boundaries, we try to reimagine some relationship, unlock novel paths to value. And in some of the past webinars on the circular economy, decarbonization, I've been giving a lot of examples on, how procurement has been able to do these kind of things. Maybe an interesting case I've seen recently, is in Saudi Arabia, where there's a company that's in charge of, building residential houses. And they realized that, construction companies, they didn't master some of the, state-of-the-art technology. So what did they do? They organized a scouting visit, to countries like China and South Korea in order to expose their construction supplier to some of the latest technology that were available there. In a second step, they jointly selected some of these technologies and they invited some of these Chinese and South Korean companies to localize, thanks also to some support from the Saudi government, some of their activities in their country. They built an industrial park in order to, make sure that they would have a physical, geographic access, and that would be easy to not only source this technology, but also to train and help the whole ecosystem of supplier, develop their capabilities. And now they're putting together a platform, an online platform that can serve to the full ecosystem in order to access all these supply and everything they need for construction. So that's really, for me, a very interesting example of orchestrating capabilities and acting as entrepreneurs, to unlock some novel paths to value, for instance. I think that examples is a good case for that. So now, the big question is, if this is the world, this QTI, environment, if this is the world that surrounds us, what does it mean in the way we are organized within procurement? Because I think there's been sometimes the tendency of seeing procurement organization as a single trick pony, there's only one good practice, which is to get organized by, categories, and then we can adapt within each categories to deliver what's relevant. But I think, with that amount of complexity, uncertainty, with all this transformation, we need to also bring diversity in the way we organize. And I'm going to show you 5 models, 5 scenarios. None of them is a fixed destiny. This is things that can evolve, that can be improved. They all exist to a certain level in organization I've been working with. And don't see them as, either or, but more as, building blocks And then you can think in terms of how can we assemble, the right practice, considering our size, a 12 people procurement organization and, an organization that's got hundreds of buyers. You will have different answers to that question. So see them as options that you can mix and match in order to better deliver value for your organization, and act as this orchestrator and as this entrepreneur that I think we can deliver to our companies and to broader industrial context. The 5 scenarios, you have a little summary here. I'm going to go into each of them. I'm going to start every time by a sort of a provocative statement that explains a little bit why I think each of them are very relevant. And then I'm going to provide, a short description of each of them. As I said, I've seen companies going in these directions, implementing them. I'm not going to go in depth into examples because I think today what's important is to help you see the big picture. Okay. So the first one I'm going to talk about it, I think, is justified by something very simple. There's many markets where we don't need to have a continuous and deep surveillance. There's many markets where, as procurement, we need to learn quickly about what's emerging in certain market, and once every 3-4 years we might have to go and pick a good solution that's really matching the expectation of our stakeholder. So what do? How do we go and organize for this type of situation? And here, what I've seen in some organization is agile procurement process. I've seen some agile squad being implemented. So, this is creating a pool of people within the procurement organization that are not attached to a specific category, but they're able to go and quickly operate in different markets, categories, geographies, and they can lead some autonomous teams, squads, that are cross-functional with a number of key stakeholders being part of it to come up with a rapid decision about, securing access to a product or a service. The key practice from an organizational standpoint is that you need to be able to quickly rotate staff across a project, markets, geographies. Doesn't mean people need to, always move from one office to another, but they need to be able to quickly interact with a high diversity of internal stakeholders. The decision rights within these projects really need to be pushed at the level of a cross-functional team that should completely be empowered in order to take the right decision. A good thing sometimes for some big indirect project is by doing something very quick and very compact in terms of effort to identify a new supplier is you might not need to involve 30 people and get feedback from, all HR managers across all countries. You could take some of the group HR director as part of the group. And then if it's important enough, just go and quickly be able to source this type of activities. We had webinars in the past where we've been describing these types of process and concrete examples on how to implement that. Ingredients for success, of course, cross-functional collaboration and leadership, absolutely essential. Having this leadership and learning orientation, people need to be able to quickly jump into a new space, understand the market quickly, and feel confident to lead a team with sometimes some fairly high-ranking stakeholders. And that doesn't mean this is chaos. That doesn't mean this is improvisation. We still need standard process, and we still need to have supervision to make sure that everything goes against to plan from a compliance point of view, from passing some gate. So simplifying to the maximum, but making sure that we go through the very classic stages of a procurement process, and we deliver as it is expected in any procurement project. The strengths, the very strong responsiveness, a better balance of resources by having people that can, help here and work on a project there and switch. And, something also that I've seen in some companies who've done that is it can be refreshing. People have been working on a big category for some time and, they want to experience something. They want to be exposed to different markets, learn from that experience. So this is a nice way also for offering some opportunity internally for people to switch. The risk is if we just do too many things in that way, we might be losing some of the broader coherence, strategic coherence that we can bring from the category strategies. And of course, if we just have these groups of individuals able to jump from one area to another, we could be too much of it. We could be losing some of the category expertise. Not going to mention on that, but every time that address some specific aspect of the QTI framework. Okay, so that's for the Agile Squads. Now, something that's very important to me, and I've been repeating so many times, I got sometimes the impression that we're expecting buyers to be able to be plugged to so many sources of data and suddenly, out of all these sources of data to do some true matching. But I think that the more we go ahead, the more we'll realize it's actually impossible. Only very, very few people are able to, deep dive into many different perspectives and are able to, build a big picture out of this. And, they still need to be outstanding in terms of relationship management, cross-functional leadership, and so on. So what does it mean? So this means that I really believe that within procurement organization or as a external support, we'll see some analyst-centered teams. So what we'll see is teams that will support buyers by pre-digesting information, by putting it into perspective with a talent related to understanding market intelligence, with understanding cost impact, understanding sustainability and risk aspects. And they will be putting some, pre-structured analysis at the disposal of the buyers so they can take the best decisions. So having these teams that will be supporting not just procurement, but also the broader organization, the executive, the cross-functional teams with the right information, the right knowledge, the right insight and foresight that can help them make their job. So we could be building market foresight cells that are, going to be a combination maybe of a market analysts that can quickly analyze, gain access to a lot of data on certain markets, and data scientists that will be able to pull information about price of raw materials and volatility of raw materials quickly, and other people that might be scutting a little bit on the innovation side, what technology could be existing in certain market, and together these small market cells could provide some options, I say more than recommendations, that buyers and cross-functional group will be able to harness in order to deliver their job. Integrated management risk, we need both real-time and longer-term risk signal that can be mapped onto the complete value chain, the environment, to inform decision. Here again, more and more, I see some companies, they are building specialist risk intelligence teams that support, buyers on during crisis, but also to understand some of the long-term challenges from a risk standpoint under organization. Key ingredient, we need dedicated resource, we need data access. It's only possible if we invest in accessing data. And we need to have these teams that are really good interface with the buyers. If you don't have this very close relation, then you're just creating more silos, and that's a risk. Huh? So, this is something that can have really a very strong influence on strategy and project by providing, really powerful insight. But, there's for some markets, it might not work so well. These teams might not have, the access to the realities of the market. Huh? So that's an important point. If I give you an example, if we work on the cacao market, there's a lot of dynamics, very local actors. Well, you won't see them in the data. You won't see them in the report. You need to be, deeply engaged with people on the ground to understand what's happening in some market. So that works when the data is available, but then you can have a risk of detachment from reality, if that's not the case. And you need to have the data, and you need to have people who can build, the process to interpret the data in a good way. Okay, let me go to the next one. And the next one is pretty simple, because efficiency never ceases to matter, because this is part of our duty, not just to do more in terms of impact on the external world and for our companies, but we also need to be continuously more efficient. Huh? So what does it mean today to become more efficient? Well, we will go slowly into a more AI-orchestrated procurement activities that will be supervised by humans. We will be getting more and more AI agents that will be taking over some of the activities that we are doing today. Sometimes they will be very autonomous for many activities, and sometimes they'll have a collaborative role. They'll support us in some of our decisions. And we need to make sure we can supervise, their work and, ensuring ethical consideration, managing exception, and, the issue of hallucination will need to be addressed as part of the supervision of these AI agents. We'll see a number of things. Autonomous sourcing agent that will be able to do supplier discovery, that will be able to support the consultation process. And when I say agent, it's not just one agent for each of them, but there might be multiple agents that will be able to collaborate and complement each other more than collaborate over time in order to do a consultation. One of them will help for the question and answers that suppliers might be asking. Others might be classifying, getting information and classifying risk out of the information that's provided. So we can have a lot of agents that we can combine in the future to support what we do. We still need to have humans in the loop, and they will need to be able to make sure that we work against, the expectations of the stakeholder, using their knowledge. They will need to have this kind of higher level knowledge of what makes sense. And also, again, according to the values. So that's where I wanted to share. I'm seeing some comments, so trying to read at the same time a bit difficult. I think, I saw, I probably, it's a new presentation, and I've moved from 2 to 4 here in the number. So 3 is not missing. It's just this one that's number 3. Sorry for that. Key ingredient for success: critical thinking, governance. We need to build a governance like for Agile Squad. We will need a governance, but here also we will need this governance. We need to have this supervision skill. And a very big challenge is knowledge silos. If we want agents to work fine, they will need to access a lot of context. If you want an AI agent to address like a shortage of a product, well, they might need to gain access to a lot of different sources of information in order to be able to, build the full picture. And they might need to have information about all the suppliers' current performance. They might need to have information about demand level coming from other source of information. They might need to have access to category strategies that have been informing what to do in certain circumstances. They might need to have access to external sources of information. So one of the biggest blocking points is not just quality of data, but it's also the ability to interconnect knowledges, context from different sources in order to inform these models so they can really take decisions by having the full picture, accessible to them. And that's a long way forward for many of the applications we could be having in procurement and supply chain. The strength, high efficiency, very rapid execution, that can really support us with a lot of, lower value added tasks and do a lot of pre-work that help us. Risk, the bias, the hallucination, but also, imagine a moment where everything goes wrong in certain market and you only have a couple of people that are able to supervise some of these AI agents, and then they might be totally overwhelmed by the amount of analysis and decision they can do in real time. Normal period of time, normal period in terms fairly stable period, that might be easy to manage. But when you've got like a lot of things going on, all of these agents are going to be facing difficulties. If we have agents that do a good job early 2020, suddenly when we've got the COVID challenge, well, you should have to unplug and replug and reconnect them to a lot of information. So we need to be careful from that point of view. And yeah, this is scenario 3. The next point is simply because we can drive. I've seen that so many times. We can drive major cross-industry changes. There's so many deep industry transformation that are taking place today, and procurement is very well positioned to support with these changes and transformation. I gave you examples already. And, I think that's the opportunity we have. If we don't do it, someone will step in and will do it, and will be on the side supporting them. But for a number of these transformation, cross-industry change, we have the capability to come in and make a difference. So this one is scenario 4. We can act as ecosystem transformers. So this is really like, where we need to have some people taking this kind of entrepreneurial hat. And their goal is really to make more systemic change within a certain industry. This can drive decarbonation, circularity, digital interoperability, and this can end up, connecting together different suppliers in order to put forward new solutions for the business. And this can push for adopting some new governance models, managing different ways of pushing decisions. I'll give you an example. One company in Italy in the food sector, they've decided that all of their products that use eggs, they should be eggs that can be, running outside and not be in a cage. So they wanted to have free-range eggs from all of their supplier. But all of their supplier, were working on the models where you had all these chicken within these cages. So what they did in terms of completely transforming this supply market, they started to build relationship with an association, not-for-profit organization, and some universities, so that could put together a complete support process for farmers, delivering them some education and support in order to make, the shift from cage chicken to free-range chicken. So that's an example where we need to establish an ecosystem governance model working nicely with both, the association, the academics, and all the farmers in a way that's, making positive steps for all of them. Sometimes this forces us to think differently about intellectual property or access to data. If we want to make radical change in terms of the way we operate in a certain industry, we need to push some companies to share more information. So if we want to implement the circular economy, well, very often we need to provide information on how to dismantle the product, on what's the raw materials being used in the product to the downstream recycler. So this is becoming easy for them to, do the reintegration, the support remanufacturing, the reuse, refurbishing, or repair activities, for instance. And, this kind of entrepreneurial initiative we need. Key ingredients for success: think-tank thinking, seeing the big picture. That's very important. Creating momentum, being able to mobilize, bring together internal stakeholder, external player on, hey, we've got this big challenge to make happen, and all together we can make it happen, and the change management associated with it. The ecosystem transformer might not need to be a very big team with a lot of people. There might be a small pool of people, or within certain categories of domain, people that have been identified to drive some of the longer term changes. But I think the message is also, we need to act like that. We need to push for these changes to happen by saying, hey, we've received all these signals. Now, maybe it's time for you to look at what could be done, dear stakeholders, because we have the capability to do things differently by combining suppliers in a different way. Strengths: mobilizing, accelerating change, sharing risk across a supply chain. The risk is complex governance, conflict, and difficulties to put everybody on the same page. I've seen situations that have failed simply because it was difficult to put everybody on the same page, working according to one agenda, of course. So we are getting to the last scenario, and that one is not really a surprise because, this is something we've been talking about. And I say, because market knowledge still matters, even if there's a lot of changes, a lot of evolution, there's many situations where our ability to accumulate a lot of knowledge about the market, knowing a lot of people within a market that can help us to understand what's happening, being able to interpret data related to markets is something very important. And this is scenario 5, which consists in having category-centric models where, we can have teams in charge of categories who really, work together with the stakeholder in order to manage the value that can be delivered by the supplier, whether this is about innovation, sustainability, supporting growth, risk, impact on top line, well, whatever this is. This is an area where category-centric models are still very important. Key practice: category councils, making sure that it's not just a procurement category strategy, but really the company strategy for the category by engaging internal stakeholders and having this internal collaboration. We cannot have said that so many times. The quality of an external collaboration is dependent on the quality of the internal collaboration. It's collaborative approach, deepening the ties, and it's very performance focused, but multidimensional. Key ingredient for success, the depths of market and value chain knowledge. Just knowing the 3 suppliers in the market is not enough. We need to know who are their clients. We need to know who are their sub-suppliers. We need to know who they depend on in order to do a good job. So this is a more of a 360 perspective on each major supplier, but also on emerging players that can be coming in the market. Let's not fool ourselves with very short category strategies. Dynamic, complex market needs depth in terms of analysis. And of course, this is from a risk point of view, There's a lower agility because, sometimes we tend to invest in a big category where there's very strong decision. And if the world is changing, it's more difficult to step back. Huh? And also categories in itself can be silos because, there's a certain way of looking at the market, a certain way of delivering value to the business, but they might not be open enough to other products that are used in conjunction with what's coming from these categories. So that's it, really, in terms of the different scenarios, 5 of them. I'll come back and show you the list very soon. And I think, the future of procurement will be on mastering the right blend of organizational model, especially if we continue to live in this QTI world. So the scenarios, the Agile Squads, being able to jump rapidly on the barricade, being able to put a cross-functional team together and then sourcing something rapidly, and that having its own governance. Analyst-centered teams, small group of experts who have access to a lot of data, who can study maybe the cost, maybe the market, maybe sustainability aspects, carbon, maybe risk, some of these specific points, and then they can pre-digest information, put analysis together for buyers and cross-functional team and top executive in the company in order to take the best decision. The third one is AI-Orchestrated Procurement, so AI agents supervised by humans that will be supporting the overall company to automate, augment decisions, but also anticipate some of the challenge that we will be facing. And this is a fairly new area we need to further develop. Ecosystem transformers, maybe small groups of people who can bring and lead on very entrepreneurial transformation on some markets where we can be making a very strong difference. We can be shaping how other players outside are working. And then still, the category-centric models where we've got this deep expertise on the market and strategic influence that can be making a difference. All of these, they need their own governance framework, they need their own practice, they need specific skills. Switching from one to another is more opportunities for people to, go deep in terms of, their experience, nourish their skills, take a different perspective, breathe some time by doing something different. There's a lot of things we still need to discuss. And I hope we can still have conversations and discussion. If some of you want to discuss these points, more directly, very happy to do this because I think there's so many perspectives we still need to discuss and exchange on. What I'm asking you now is drop in the chat. I saw people are started to do this. Maybe you say today we're doing this one and that one, but tomorrow what we need to do is this one and this one and this one. I'll be a sort of a easy, quick way of getting your feedback without using super fancy tools. And while you do that, I'll be checking some of the past questions that we've been getting. So I'll let you put things in. So we had some hellos from South Africa, from different places. Yes, you will receive the presentation. And I see. So we got a question about sustainable procurement and proof to COMEX that it will not be more expensive. I can answer to that. I mean, to a certain extent. I think we had one question about the balance between strategic, operational. Yeah, I don't know who wrote that because it's anonymous for GDPR reason, but some very interesting comments about how we're talking in the future more about strategic procurement all rolled together with operational procurement and AI assistant. Well, exactly the kind of mix we need to think that needs to be fit. So there were comments about scenario 3. I've been reacting to that, and some of the people said 5-1 tomorrow 1-3-5. So adding 3 to it, 1-2 tomorrow 3. So 1-5, 3-1-4-5. And there's a question about, would you see large organization having an hybrid model that comprise all 5? Yes, possible. I know some organization, for instance, in the telecom sector, they're already very close to have the 5 well established, today 5, today 5-2, going to 5-2-4-1. So I think, that's very interesting. There's really a feel from your input that we're expanding. 3 seems to be, the one that we all expect in terms of having these AI agents that will be supporting. I don't see so many comments about 4. Some of you, yes. See, yeah, toward the end, we've got more 4. Andre, yeah. Well, good reflection. Thank you. And yeah, so the answer about sustainable procurement. I think a lot of the ecosystem transformation that we've been talking about are actually about, sustainability. They're not just about sustainability. It's not, we don't do things just for a sustainable point of view, but, resource access and many other reasons as well that forces us to think differently about that. And some of the transformation in terms of energy, in terms of circularity, can provide much more benefits. So I think if we have, the right support in terms of the analyst team that can help us, see the bigger picture, then it becomes much easier, to map all the implications in terms of cost. Once more, I want to remind you that probably, if you want to, for instance, decarbonize from a sustainability point of view, in 40% of the time, it's going to bring savings. Maybe not savings in the first year, but savings in the second year, because by changing the way we do things, we have opportunities to save energy, to save raw materials, and that materialize into savings in many situations. Between 40% to 50%, 60% of, CO2 that's saved is also delivering, financial savings. So that we always need to have in mind, and we need to, leverage that ability within category teams, within ecosystem transformers, to be able to, and these support teams, to be able, for instance, to have very quickly some cost models that are very much with some depth that can really help us to see all the cost impact of a number of change, and sometimes get new ideas on what could we do further in order to make that more cost effective. And the other point is, next to this TCO analysis, we can have the life cycle analysis. So again, if you've got the right analyst team that can help you to, support a cross-functional group, access the right data to make all these elements clear and to make the calculations, then we're in a much stronger position. Evidence-driven. We will not be simply making change because of the moral imperative. We also need the data, understand what investment is needed, when it can pay back, and be able to look at that with a lot of data. Oh, I'm getting much more questions now. Thank you, Annie, for the nice feedback. Percentage of analytical team versus total size of procurement team. This team to be quantified. Therefore, it would be good to get the industry practice. It's difficult, because I think you will For instance, let me give you some examples. I've been working with companies that are more in the paint business, or they're assembling raw materials. Well, with a very small team of people, maybe just one analyst, you can do a lot because there's a lot of data available about the price of raw materials and if you buy the right data access, and then you can put that into models that are easy to describe. So here, with one person, you can have a lot of quick impact in terms of having this analysis team to make a difference. But other organizations, when you have a wide diversity of product and services, and you still want to do that. Well, if I take the case of Vodafone, for instance, they've got a team that's more than 10 people working in their design to cost support team in order to do that. But over time, they've not just been able to do the costing aspect, but they can pile up elements related to carbon and risk as well. So, they've built some backbone of information that can be used from other elements. So you get more layers for less cost of insight, by adding to this initial design to cost team. And here, we might find another ratio for this type of industry. So I'd be very careful, but I think, it's really a big question. Everything we do, we need to be able to justify. We can benchmark some of these organizations to understand, having better insight, how much they've been able to further save, and that can help us. But we also need to build a case for making that change that simply goes beyond these simple equations, because we've got this QTI world that's bringing a lot of change. Only information can help us to operate better in this type of world. With the contingent group of state or type of groups more mature in time of this QTI posture? Well, what we see, it's a big question. What we see today is we are coming from a period of time where we used to see the world as being a positive game. The more we would be trading across the world, the more there would be opportunities for everyone to develop. Well, that wasn't totally the case, because some people were not so happy about what happened with globalization. But at the same time, I think, what we see now is a big shift. We have, different blocks in the US, in Asia as well, China, that have adopted a more neo-mercantile perspective than the classic neoliberal perspective. What does it mean? They see access to resources, control of resources, whether this is semiconductors, whether this is raw material, whether this is, data, as being, the core aspect for the future. And one thing that's very important to keep in mind is, with people like, the way, some of the leaders in these countries, in this region work, is not simply about doing more, delivering more, but sometimes, if I lose 5, but if everybody else loses 40, then I win in the end. So the game dynamics we see today in the world is going to be changing. We come from a period where we had that belief that globalization was bringing a lot of good to a lot of people, even though we were aware of the social impact that were not, an environmental impact already. But we will have a different way of thinking. And I think that's very much driven by, the US and also some of the China these days. Yeah, I agree. We need to be strong at the storytelling, strong data, but also that ability to tell the right story. We're facing people in companies who are taking tons of decisions in a very fast way. Most executive, that just have a position, whatever they see within minutes. So we need to be able to continuously share the story, expose people to ideas, put things in perspective, share critical information so we can help them to stop, wait, think, reflect. That's interesting. I need to spend more time, and then open for that exchange. One of the projects I've seen in a company This was the buyer that was looking to use a digital product passport, which allows to trace information through the life cycle of a product, to implement a return cycle on the product. And that was involving, a whole flow between the client, the supplier, the company. That buyer said to me, I'm not going to push for a decision. I'm going to wait for having the opportunity to build a right meeting at the right time with the right people from both marketing, supply chain, logistics, and product, so we can put in front of them, something they can discuss together. And having the ability to sense the time where it's right to, put people in front of an opportunity is part of the entrepreneurial skills that I was describing. Yeah, I think the comment about the regional aspect is very important, and our ability to operate in different geographies. There's still that dimension of having some local teams able to support local market, regional market, and maybe this is you can have the central analyst team, but some of the Agile Squad can be operating in many places, but you could still need, some regional category specialist to drive things. You outsource the analytics to the external professional company and it works well. Yeah, I think that's, that can be a really good solution in some situations. It really depends of, which analytic, what you're looking at in terms, is it market intelligence? Is this like cost analysis? I think sometimes, we need to combine multiple sources of data, and it's good to have, some people that can be inside the company, sometime outside, in a nearshoring model, for instance, who can help with this. And yeah, that's an option. We don't need to do everything. Thank you for all the questions, the comments, the interesting feedback. First time I'm doing that presentation. I'm sure I'm going to be pushing further in terms of the ideas behind that. What are the skills behind how to find this balance with regional activities? All these are, really interesting input for me also to take this forward. Again, as usual, always happy to further exchange by email, having a quick discussions. If you've got interesting cases of working across maybe already 4 of these scenarios, models, very interesting to hear from you. Write short case studies, all together, we can do great things. And, that's also a call to you to join some of the research we do in order to share more, understand more, and build something together that's useful for everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you.